first item I ever picked up in Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon, that wasn't clothing or weapons was smut. I know what you're thinking. Will, you degenerate, of course it was smut. Listen, I didn't know it was smut, but I learned real quick. I found it in what looked like the guard's break area after I busted out of my prison cell. It was unexpected and funny and told me a lot about this world and the people in it. There's a lot of clever stuff like that in the Fall of Avalon. It has some grand ideas and it nails a lot of what it tries, but uneven difficulty, a few poor design choices, and a holy grail's worth of bugs prevents it from finding greatness.
Do you see what a miracle I am? Healed. Healed. I am no longer sick.
Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon, is a reimagining of Arthurian myth. When his homeland is overwhelmed by a plague, King Arthur leads his people to Avalon and cleanses the land of a primordial force called the Weirdness. That was 600 years ago, and the Weirdness is creeping back. It's a cool setup, and the story is pretty compelling from there. You are a no-name prisoner who bumps into a fragment of Arthur's eternal soul, who then wants you to help restore him. King Arthur being my own personal Cortana? Neat, but a lot of folks are rightfully displeased with Camelot nowadays. The legends are long dead, and their names live on as titles that are passed down to new knights. They're not the demigods of old, they're just men, and they're not doing a very good job of running things. That leads to some compelling choices to make, both on the main path and off of it. Which side do I pick? Who do I help? What's up with this undead guy who's super into pickled herring and cheese?
Sour herring with cheese. I can smell it. You made it. Do you understand now?
The Fall of Avalon does difficulty by making enemies massive hell sponges early on, especially if they're wearing heavy armor. In my search for the holy grail of builds, I chose poorly when I initially decided to focus on archery. A lot of fights take place inside, and almost every enemy in Avalon has one strategy: bum rush you. That would be fine if you could take them out before they got to you. You can't. I was shooting these bandits, and I mean regular old John Bandit-ass bandits, in the head 4 or 5 times, and they weren't even slowing down. Do you know how demoralizing it is to watch a dude with 4 arrows sticking out of his skull run at you?
I've had worse.
The silver lining here is that first-person melee combat feels quite good. Hits have weight and impact, parries are satisfying to pull off, and you'll often stagger a bit when you block an attack. Even weapon choices matter. I used a club early on, but once I got my first knife, I could immediately feel the difference when I hit some poor guy. And that's different still from the power behind a longsword. And of course, these options can be complemented by magic spells that range from shooting fireballs to summoning little gremlins with big clubs. It's not particularly deep combat, but it works well. As I leveled up, I started dumping points into strength and critical strike. I got bigger, more powerful swords and better armor. And, slowly, the John Bandits of the world started to die a little faster. But guys with real honest-to-Arthur armor? I felt like I was trying to chop down a tree with a dull axe. I could eke out wins by chugging potions and timing my dodges and parries well. One-on-one, that's a good, satisfying fight. In large groups, however, it can be an absolute slog rather than the enticing challenge I enjoy in other notoriously difficult games like Ninja Gaiden. The stat requirements to do certain things feel a little high too, especially early on. It can take a half dozen levels just to wield a longsword properly, for example. During one, otherwise really good, quest, I had to convince a necromancer who was trying to beat death to give up the whole raising the dead business and see if he could use his substantial knowledge to help the living. If you don't, he turns himself into an undead in order to figure out why his minions are all so mindless, only to become a shambling corpse like everyone else. That's a funny ending, but the dude seemed alright, and I wanted better for him. So I reloaded my save, dumped several points into the stat you use for persuasion, and got him to try out being a healer instead. Mission accomplished. I felt like I had done something cool and been rewarded for building my character a certain way. The problem is that doing so cost me a lot, because you only get 1 attribute point per level up. Early on, when every skill point matters, that's a lot of commitment to be good at conversation. Early on, I had to do every available side quest to make any progress, at least until I discovered the joys of summoning little minions and letting them distract the enemy while I wailed on them. It's lousy that only a couple of the playstyles are really viable. You can be someone with heavy armor or medium armor who lives and dies by dodges, and a melee weapon, or somebody who casts magic and summons little friends to do incredible violence for you. Nothing else seems consistent enough across all the different situations that will be thrown at you. So the combat's a mixed bag depending on your build, but the missions you'll use it in aren't bad. They're generally pretty well written in the everyone you talk to is very interested in telling you their life story with very little prompting kind of way. Take that necromancer, for example, or the quest where an alchemist sent me to unravel an ancient druidic ritual, only for the whole thing to be an elaborate prank, mocking the people who'd seek the druid's knowledge. Then there was the guard who hates seagulls and enlists you in his anti-avian campaign.
Can you hear me, you flying vermin? Just try landing here and I'll pluck your asses clean.
This is good stuff. Non-quest NPCs are less interesting. Most citizens are there to dump exposition and backstory, and you're an empty vessel for all of it. That's fine. That's just the kind of RPG the Fall of Avalon is. It can feel artificial, but it gets the job done if you want a game where you're the most important person in existence, and the rest of the world literally bends to your will. Which kinda makes sense since you're the meat suit carrying around pieces of King Arthur's soul. That dude is so powerful that he even lets you slow down time in combat. Pretty rad. The issue is that basically every quest boils down to go here, speak to person, kill thing, acquire items, and then come back. And after a while, that gets boring. Almost every time I got to the next part of the story and thought I'd make major progress on my overall quest, the person I had to talk to hit me with some variation, well, I'm not gonna help you for free, buddy.
Nothing in life is free, you know that. Do something for me, and I might consider sharing our greatest secret with you.
Or, hey, good job. Now I need you to do this. And I had to go do more busy work, and I mean every time. And while it's true that doing things like braving the weirdness at night and exploring off the beaten path to find a hidden side quest is really cool, it doesn't change the repetition of what you actually have to do to progress. Certain important story fights also feel overtuned, to say the least, making that side stuff feel fairly mandatory to keep up.
You are nothing but a peasant.
And then there are the bugs. I've had 2 separate side quests bug out and essentially become incompletable. The first sent me to kill a specific bandit that was apparently already dead, locking me out of ever finishing it. The second sent me into a watchtower to take out a monster infestation, kill the undead keepers that gave their lives watching the southern part of Avalon's major fortress, and bring back 5 insignias to prove I've done it. I've searched high and low multiple times and even reverted to an earlier save, but no matter what I do, I can only find 4. It's a shame, because the narrative setup, which involves a traumatized, hard-drinking former keeper haunted by survivor's guilt, is compelling. I want to complete that quest to see what happens, but I can't. The issues go beyond bugged quests, too. Sometimes, items I pick up or put in my stash will randomly disappear from my inventory. NPCs answer my questions with dialogue that is clearly meant for a different question I haven't asked. Occasionally, when I reload a previous save, characters appear in the wrong places. Summon companions often just sit there in combat, doing nothing. And on and on and on it goes. To developer Questline's credit, 2 hotfixes since launch have fixed a lot of stuff already, but there's still a lot left to do, and the Fall of Avalon feels unfinished as a result. Video games are hard to critique because they're both art and product. A writer I deeply respect once wrote that bugs and glitches are perhaps the least interesting thing about video games. I think about that a lot. Bugs didn't break the Fall of Avalon for me, but they did taint my time with it. As I played, I wondered how much of what I was experiencing now should affect my appreciation for what it gets right. I often didn't know how I felt about all these conflicting elements until I had time away from it to sit and think. Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon is a new take on a tale that's been around for centuries, and as a story and a world, it works. It certainly gives a new meaning to the phrase, the once and future king. All of this has happened before, it claims, and all of it will happen again, unless we put an end to it, and perhaps not even then. The stories we tell ourselves are eternal, repeating, mixing in the telling, and sometimes a myth and its impact on us is more powerful than the reality that spawned it. That's just how stories are. That's how I felt while I played The Fall of Avalon. It fails sometimes as a game you play, as a piece of technology, as a product. It is buggy, the quest design is rote, and it has the same flaws as every RPG of this style. But when it works, it really works, and I cannot deny that it compelled me. I think sometimes that matters more. I enjoyed spending time in this world with these characters, exploring this story. I didn't always like playing it, and its unfinished nature frustrated me, but I can't stop thinking about it either. Maybe that's enough. Arthurian myth is a tragedy. It never ends well. But the idea is that if it happened again, and we are promised that it will, it might end differently. That failure now does not mean failure forever. That sometimes trying something ambitious and getting close is enough. That's not to give Tainted Grail The Fall of Avalon a pass for its flaws, but they don't stop me from believing in its successes either. Perhaps, like Arthur himself, the story here is not about what is or was, but what might have been and could be again.
Then darkness, a terrible loneliness.
For more, check out our reviews of Elden Ring, Night Reign, or Game of Thrones, King's Road, and for everything else in video games based on Arthurian literature, keep it here at IGN.
I'll remember more. I am not sure.